A pleasure to meet y'all at last, and welcome back to some more Facecam Special Insurgence, the Enlightening venture, and I might as well go ahead and bring in some Need for Speed related action into the series. And what I got here to show for that is Need for Speed Payback. Yeah. This one, I can tell you, this one's probably the best that I've seen in the series thus far. Of course, if you've been a long-time subscriber of my channel, especially between 2008 and 2016, then you would have known that I've actually gone ahead to play at least a few different Need for Speed games. Especially throughout the last 5 or 6 years, I've went on ahead and played Need for Speed Rivals, Need for Speed 2015, and I also played Need for Speed Heat. But at some point in time, I managed to get this as a free download for PlayStation Plus back in fall of 2020. So I eventually went on ahead and played this. Because after all, with a lot of new games coming in and a lot of new ideas starting to come into play, that's eventually what led me to go on ahead and create the Emergency Stockpile. Basically a new series that I have that's still running right now to accompany Mainline Season 6, as well as a few other newer projects of mine related to GWK that would also premiere here in 2021. So, this was basically the first title that I essentially had played in the Emergency Stockpile. There were 60 episodes in total, and then of course there were other titles out there like NHL 20, Rise of the Tomb Raider, Fallout Shelter, as well as, several other things out there. Dragon's Dogma, Dark Arisen, Beyond Two Souls, and then of course Monster Jam Steel Titans. So, you'll be seeing some of those games on here again, because I'm pretty sure I already showed off some of them. But again, there has yet to be some appearances from some of the other games that I've already talked about that premiered on the Emergency Stockpile. But again, as I've said before, this one is probably the best. Out of all Need for Speed games, Payback is probably the best. And I can tell you for a couple reasons why. Because as someone who has experienced the whole entire game, and yeah, I played the whole thing to the point where I beat it, it has not gotten to any point that actually started to anger me in any possible way. Of course, it behaved in similar ways to how the other games were, but basically, if you don't recall from at one point where in the original Facecam Specials Insurgence back in early 2020, I discovered that Need for Speed Heat apparently has these little sort of like curveballs that they throw at you when playing the game. Apparently at one point I found out that even when I'm moving, the cops can arrest you. As cheap as that actually is, and as much of a big cheat that is absolutely terrible to have in a game where all of a sudden the rules are changed and now the police can arrest you while you're already moving. So, I will never forget that moment. I will never forget that I've showed it to people all over the place. That, well, Need for Speed Heat, while it might be a good game in most ways, it does have a lot of things that it tends to hide from you. So therefore, it's very deceptive, for the most part. Otherwise, I don't really have much dirt on the game itself, other than just that. There were a couple other things that I would also have to worry about, including some glitches that would occasionally take place, so it does kind of try to be almost like big rigs over the road racing when it comes to that. Maybe they didn't spend enough time working on that problem, and I don't really blame them. Maybe it was a bit of a time constraint that they had. But you know what? It takes a lot of time to put together a good game. And I feel like that with Payback from 2017, that's pretty much what the peak of their business was like. So, out of all the Need for Speed entries, Need for Speed 2015 was pretty nice and all, especially with the live-action cutscenes. I mean, that's pretty awesome. Mixing together, realistic base graphics to, in-game sort of graphics. And then, of course, Need for Speed Rivals gave us that sort of thing where either we could portray ourselves as the racers or as the police. So, I mean, that alone was a pretty nice touch, but I don't know. I could actually revisit that game at some point. I know I have occasionally revisited some other titles, other games that I've played before, but otherwise, it does seem to be that it might be a bit difficult to put together something like that. Otherwise, I don't really know what else to say here. But, of course, here in Need for Speed Payback, you do have at least a couple new tropes to it. That of which that you can race on the track, or you can race off-road, or you can probably do like several other things here and there. And I'm more than certain that Need for Speed Heat actually did this as well. Probably not quite as often. And also, when would a Need for Speed game actually have a story that actually really immerses you into a rather gigantic world out there that's filled with all sorts of other racers, and then of course just give you a first-hand shot at what feels like a big action movie that tries to be much like Fast and the Furious. So, again, that's just pretty much what I tend to get out of this, but otherwise it does look like that lots of things are just really good about in this game when you compare it to most others out there. But of course, let's not forget that Need for Speed Heat is going to be around for a little while longer, especially in the mainline series, where it already has made quite a few big appearances, especially throughout seasons, well, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Well, yeah, 6.
You kidding me?
Pretty much. I'm still going through as much of Ark Survival Evolved as I could possibly do for, and I tell you, Ark has taken up a huge fraction of mainline season 6 so far. 440 episodes, 12 minutes each. So yeah, you could pretty much do the math with that, and I already have. It's about 88 hours in total of gameplay. About 88 hours. That's almost 4 consecutive days of gameplay that I have put together just for Ark Survival Evolved, across multiple maps, so to speak. So I spent a lot of time on Ark just so I can give it to you for mainline season 6 and all that good stuff. So otherwise, I tell you, mainline season 6 is probably going to be a breeze throughout the rest of the way. Of course, I freaking failed that one. I failed that freaking race. So, yeah, I'm not proud of myself just for that. So you know what? I feel like we could probably try that again. Perhaps. So you know what? I feel like that I've got something going on here pretty well. But at this point in time, I feel like it would be pretty imperative for me to point out that for some of the newer content that I'm going to be having, then, well, just to name a few, there's been some new appearances on Hot Wheels Hilarity with some more recent content developing and some that's already out, like DIY, for example. So that, of course, is just, well, one partition of it that I feel like I should probably discuss at this point. And then, of course, there will be some other things that will also be in the works. Perhaps I will have another Hot Wheels Hilarity season in the works at some point. And then, of course, there will be another Hot Wheels Hilarity series in total that I will also be introducing here in 2021. As for other series as well, it'll be a bit difficult to put together all the way, but once I get through that whole thing and once I get through most of the other things I have in my life, then it will be pretty easy from here on out. So, otherwise, tune in next time on GWK.